Welcome to the Church Security Answer Man video blog, where it's all about ministry safety, security, and making a difference for people. And now, your host, a former law enforcement officer, criminal justice trainer, and security expert, Captain Joe Puckett.
Well, hello everyone. Welcome to the Church Security Answer Man, our audio podcast and our video blog, whichever one you're joining us at. You can catch us certainly on iTunes. Hopefully that's where some of you are listening to us, or you can catch us on our website at churchsecurityanswerman.com for the video podcast especially. So thanks for joining me today. We're season 4, episode 2 for our show. And, you know, I'm very happy you're joining me. I don't care how you're listening, what you're up to. Podcasts are great if you're out mowing the yard or out for a jog or sitting on the beach, as well as videos can be viewed in, different settings. And so I'm glad that you're joining us today, whatever you're doing. And so today we're going to start kind of a heavy topic, but I think it's an important discussion. I'm excited to have this discussion with you, even though it's a heavy topic, because I think it's definitely one we're getting lots of emails on, and I'm getting lots of messages on. So, so today's message, we're going to talk about what we can learn from the Texas church shooting. And this is going to be part 1. And I'm breaking this down into 2 areas. Part 1 that we're going to talk about right now is pre-attack review, the things going on ahead of time that we might could learn from. And then we are going to, next week, talk about the actual attack situation. So, and again, I'm just giving you my opinions based on my law enforcement experience, my interaction with church security programs, all of those kind of things. That's my perspective. I'm not egotistical about it. I don't think I know everything. I don't even think I know close to everything. So, but I do have the heart to organize this stuff for any of you that need the information. And certainly that's what this community is all about, and to get others' input as well. So we're going to talk about the facts that I know, what I've heard, those kind of things relative to the pre-attack, because I think that's very important for us. So thank you for joining me here. Thank you for joining me this show for the audio podcast or the video show. I'm Joe Puckett. I am your host, and I'm glad you're here joining me for the discussion. And I want to reinforce, it doesn't matter what size of a ministry you have, what your denomination is. I don't care about any of that stuff. What I do care about is that if you're interested in security concepts for your building, for your people, for your ministries, we all share those common components. That's the basis for security, and the fact that our churches are vulnerable. And so we have people in these buildings that are facing forward oftentimes. They're not planning for these kind of things. We each have buildings, places that we meet, and so we share that. And so again, I don't care what your denomination is or those kind of things. I just want to talk about our plans for security. So what I want to start today, the 2-part discussion about that shocking active shooter incident that occurred on Sunday, November 5th, 2017 at the First Baptist Church in Sutherland Springs, Texas. So what I want to talk about today, that timeline, and the facts that I see, and I want to discuss those facts. So this event's not, this two-show event's not meant to scare you, not meant to scare your leadership, but it's designed, I kind of look at myself as, someone who wants to knock the rough edges off of things. And I definitely get from emails I've been receiving and feedback that some folks are, in a bit of a panic. And I understand that, but I want to kind of mellow that panic just a little bit and talk about some things to help improve our own security, or our own ministries, our own churches just a little bit, and protect our people. So I want to talk about that and kind of a balance. I'm all about the balance thing. Even when we look at a difficult situation like this, I'm still all about finding the balance in this. So these facts that we're talking about are what I've derived from media accounts and from enforcement folks who were on the scene or investigating the incident. I was not there, so this is all secondhand type stuff, but I want to talk about it. I want to kind of organize it for our minds And so that's what I'm here to do. So I want to piece together the helpful basic timeline and incidents. And I also want to mention that I'm not critical of the members of Sutherland Springs Baptist Church. I care about them. I feel for them. I just want to use this as an educational opportunity, as we should. These kind of incidents, we should learn from these kind of things. So, and I see it as a valuable experience for us to learn from. And that's my only motive. So I want to discuss this. And so let's start with the pre-attack facts. You know, the first thing is in this incident, the shooter did have a history of violence. We want to make sure and talk about that. That's oftentimes a common theme with these folks that commit active shooter or violent incidents. He's had a history. And I'm not going to mention his name, that kind of stuff today. I don't want to glorify him anymore, give him any more attention. So we're just going to be calling him the shooter. Looking back, according to the official reports, we know that the shooter had previously assaulted his wife. He assaulted his stepson and was even reported as a suspect in beating a dog. But that was just a report. There was nothing official found on that I can find anywhere. So it appears that these incidents that we're talking about here so far occurred about 3 to 4 years prior to the shooting incident here just recently in November. And there was also, and I talked about the report about the beating of the dog, and I want to correct myself there. There was an actual report made on that. I can't find where there's any charges that were filed in that beating of the dog, but there were charges filed against him. In fact, he even did some incarceration time for the assaulting his wife and his stepson, as best I can tell. There was also a report of him sexually assaulting someone, but that I cannot find any official charge. It really is a rumor at this point, but I wanted to mention it, even though I don't like talking about rumors. I think it's important for me here to at least discuss that a little bit. So people close to him have been reported as saying that he had a lot of hatred and demons in him. Those were their words recently, over the last few months to few weeks and even days. There are reports that while he was in the military in 2012, that he had also been placed in a mental health institution for being a danger to himself and others, and had actually, was one of the reasons why he was there, he had actually made death threats at the time against his chain of command in the military. And I've even read some information where he had escaped from that mental health facility at one point and had to be found and taken back into custody and taken back there. Prior to this attack, this shooting in November, this shooting at Sutherland Springs Baptist Church, he was apparently just prior had been texting threats to his mother-in-law, who did attend this church. She was a regular attendee. I don't know how regular, but fairly regular from what I understand, to attending this First Baptist Church in Sutherland Springs. But she was not attending that day of the shooting in November 5th. And I also want to note here, just this is the best place to note it, that he did, in that incident, his wife's grandmother, so I guess would be his grandmother-in-law. His grandmother-in-law was in attendance at church that day during the shooting, and she was killed. He did shoot and kill her. So now, what should we talk about this? What's important? I gave you some facts that I know. I don't know everything, but those are important facts that I want to discuss. So the reason I want to talk about this and I want to become aware of it is because these are the kind of things that you and I might come across as an usher or as somebody within the church. Is we might start hearing about somebody in the church that's having bad mental health days, that they're making threats against people at the church. And I think those should be important things that we pay attention to. Those should be they should be considered security threats. And so if they show up to church to visit, we should be saying hi to them. We should be asking them how they're doing. We should engage them in a screening process, if you will, at the door. And I talk about screenings at different times, and that's basically anybody that's appears to be a bit of a problem, or there's issues that concern us, we should be stopping them at the door. And so that's the most efficient place. We should have somebody working that door, as we'll talk about. But we should be saying hi to them. We should be, ministering to them still. But we should be communicating with them where we can. Maybe we don't let them into our church, but we're still communicating with them where we can. So, there's been some discussion that this attack was because his in-laws attended there. He was having disputes with them. And so he was disputing with at least one of them prior to this incident. It sounds like his mother-in-law. There was some direct disagreements going on, disputes going on, some angry words, some angry texting, those kind of things. Now, do I expect that we can see these angry people becoming violent and attacking our churches? I don't, and I'm not saying that. I'm not being critical of these folks in this church. But there's a lot of information here that you and I can learn from. And I want to say, you and I, can we see things ahead of time? Maybe sometimes. And so, maybe not. But if we overhear that someone's getting arrested for violence in their day-to-day life and they are angry, we should talk about it as a staff, as ushers. We should discuss that. Where we can, we try to minister to them still. We try to love them, minister to them, speak with them. But maybe there's even a point that we don't let them into church. And I think there could be that point where we don't. Maybe we're willing to minister to them somewhere else, go to their house, meet them at another location, a restaurant or something, or outside, and we minister to them. But maybe there is a point we don't let them into church. And I think that's a possibility to protect our other people. If we greet someone we know is angry as they show up to the church one Saturday or Sunday, whenever you're holding your services, and they make angry statements that concern us, what do? And I say you might take them off to the side and minister to them outside the auditorium, or give them a personal appointment. Those things that I'm talking about. Time during the week that we could minister to them, away from our main services, away from our main people. And the other point is that if we talk about someone in the community that might or does attend our church, that we might also see or hear of the increase in violence, or we might be preparing ourselves better and see them coming. And if we are aware of these kind of things, we're talking about them and prepared, we might deter a problem. That's what I'm after, by confronting them outside the church, or we might engage them outside rather than inside if violence does break out. So I'm starting to talk, and this is just one scenario. Do I think this is going to work every time? I don't. Do I think these people should have seen this coming at their church in Texas? I do not. But what I'm saying is we can learn some things from this. And one of the things we can learn is that oftentimes these violent folks have mental health behavior indicators ahead of time. And I'm talking about general community violence, active shooter violence, or they're showing signs of anger, those kinds of things. And so, if we're running across somebody like this and we know of something, then we can greet them outside the church. We can be looking for them, especially, let's look at this, especially let's say we have someone that is in our congregation or related to someone in our congregation or friends with someone in our congregation, and they're texting them very bad texts or threatening texts this week. Maybe we heighten our awareness just a little bit for the next couple weeks. If those texts continue, we continue to be more aware. If they mellow out, then we may not be putting as many resources to this process. But I think that we need to look at what we can learn from this, and that is there's pre-attack indicators sometimes, and if you and I are overhearing them, I think we should be talking about those kind of things. So that's important. There's definitely some lessons here that we can take away from this incident. So, and again, we're just talking about the pre-attack type stuff here today. Next week, we'll talk about the actual attack. Screening at the door is important and efficient. I'm always talking about that in my live trainings, online trainings. We can screen at the door. If you have a shortage of people, maybe you're just a one-person security team, or maybe you just have a couple of ushers. I do believe that, the work in the front door is a very efficient place to be. We can screen, we can see people coming in, we can talk to them as they come in, we can see them outside, we can see the front lobby, we can see the front sidewalks, maybe even part of the parking lot. And statistically, more problems are going to occur outside of your church in the parking lot. So if you and I are working the front doors, we can see those areas or some of those areas, including the sidewalks and entrances. And if we're paying attention, the next thought is if we're paying attention to potential problems and a problem people in the community or relatives to the congregation that are outbursting at the moment, then we might be better prepared. We might be better prepared for particular services or particular people and be able to see those folks coming and be able to talk to these people. And we know from past incidents in community and workplace violence that if you have communication or relationship where you converse with these people that become violent, they may skip you. So you and I just being nice to them might be enough to get them not to attack us or not to attack the church. Or if they were to come to the church and be violent, maybe there's a chance that you and I could deal with them or reason with them. And I don't like that. But if somebody's coming there to harm people, then I don't like that idea of negotiating with them necessarily, but it might be an option. So, more importantly, though, we can greet these people outside, and maybe we have to greet them outside in a forceful way. And so I hate to talk about that stuff, but we got to pay attention to those possibilities. So where might these bits of information come from? Let's talk about that. We hear these things about a person. And I want to throw something out there. If you open communication and dialogue with your members, and I hear a lot of people throwing out ideas, what can we do to communicate to our members that we are interested in their safety and we're looking out for those kind of things? I think here's one way is opening it up and saying, you want to hear about these kind of things if they're going on. Because your members might tell you. If you have a certain person they can talk to or a anonymous tip line or, something else along those lines, then maybe they'll give you a call, an anonymous tip, or they'll call and talk to you. So somebody they can seek out, something they can seek out, and I would suggest that is something you make known to the congregation. So we let them know that we have a tip line, or call Bill or call Sue on the usher team or the security team if there's any of this kind of stuff going on. And we want to have, I think we want to have a specific person. And I think it should be somebody that's in that idea of security, usher, violence prevention. Shouldn't be a counselor, shouldn't be a pastor, because we know those things need to be separated. We can't have a pastor trying to let people know that in fact that might violate many, many rules and maybe even some laws in some places. That if she or he is trying to counsel people and then let us know that there's something going on with them that's violence, I don't think that works real well. So it's got to be something outside of that. So it needs to be an usher person, a tip line that they email to or something along those lines. And I'm saying, yes, our church maybe should have a tip line or somebody that people can call that tells them that I've got a relative right now that's having mental health issues. He's threatening me. And maybe even he said something about meeting up with me at church. He's going to find me at church. So those kind of things should come in so we could be better prepared. Publicize it in the bulletin. Yeah, maybe that's a good thing to do. I have pastors, priests all the time in training say, should I announce to my congregation that we have a security team and those kind of things? I don't necessarily think we need to do that. In fact, especially if you have armed folks, they don't necessarily want to be highlighted that they're an armed security person or something like that. They want to kind of blend in. And so, but I do think this is one area where you can say we're focused more on violence these days. And one of those areas that we know we could maybe do better is have a communication line. If you know of anybody within our ministry or related or knows our ministry that may be having a bad mental health day or becoming violent, please send us an email, or please call Usher Bob or Usher Sue, whatever that looks like, on the security team. Call them on the security team at our church and let them know. Give them the violence tips or security tips. And I think that's a viable option these days, but that's my opinion. I don't see a lot of that going on yet, but I see maybe where it should be, So again, could that have prevented the Texas shooting? I have no idea. But when the shooter's mother-in-law is receiving text message threats from a relative who has a violent past, it would be nice if there was an avenue for her to tell someone easily, for her to tell someone. And then those folks, when they get notification of that, might call the police, say we have a concern. Could you do some extra patrols of the area this Sunday? Or could you send somebody here, just like we do with schools? I mean, schools, if they get a tip of violence, they're all over it. They're sending out notices to parents, calling the local law enforcement. Why should we be any different? We are just as vulnerable as schools oftentimes. So, so anyway, so I think that's a good possibility. Some avenue for them to tell you, and then you figure out what you're going to do with it. Call police, those kind of things. Have somebody armed at the front door. We might even temporarily hire an armed security officer from one of the security companies in town or something. That might be an affordable option to stand outside, be ready outside of the front doors or at the front doors during meeting times. And then when that active threat shows up, then we're there to confront it. So, and we can't be ready all the time necessarily. All of our ministries can't be ready all the time like that. But if we're hearing about special circumstances, then we can be better prepared for it. So we're looking, and I'm really clarifying, violence, those kind of things is what we'd be looking for. And again, to a security team member, an usher, not, and I want to reinforce, not people thinking they should go tell the pastor or priest. We don't want him or her getting this information and being in the middle of having to relay that to someone. So, and it may borderline on counseling or confidentiality. So we need to make it bold that it's an usher or someone else. Those leaders who learn about things through counseling, again, they can't legally necessarily share that information. So that's my interpretation, my opinion. And so, nationally, we're constantly being told by law enforcement, politicians, and leaders, if you see something, say something. And I just want to play off on that a little bit as we talk about this idea. And again, the schools react heavily when there's some kind of threat made or some kind of concern. And so you and I should be prepared to do that. We should have a tip line or somebody that they can contact. And so, we should be setting up those avenues and where people can email, phone call. And again, I'm beating this up a little bit, but I want to make sure and make that point. And then you and I might have to call law enforcement. So they need to know, we need to be setting up other avenues to protect us. So, and might we find out information that we really don't want to know or becomes a hassle for us? Sure. We might end up in the middle of something that becomes a bit of a hassle. We're having to call police and then we find out it really doesn't have to do with church. It has to do with other stuff. But, may we end up in the middle of violence among other people? And, yes, informationally, we might end up having to share stuff with police that, that somebody gave us, and it gets us in the middle of a bunch of meetings or things that we have to do with the police. And it might. But hey, that now you're serving your community, you're trying to serve your members, protect other people. And it might even be an aspect of your ministry as well when people are having difficult times and now you're a little bit involved in that situation. But at the same time, you're trying to protect your people and your church and your ministry. And I think that's a good thing. It's a good thing if you're involved in that, and we do have some communities where you find out if things start going really wrong in these communities. In the past, we've had places like Baltimore or something where just the community gets into an uprising and violence going on and stuff, and you see ministers step in, religious leaders, sometimes we might term them, and it's an important aspect. I see it. So this might be on a smaller scale in your community where you get information, you relay that to police, and you end up having to be part of that process of communication with folks. I still think that could be a good thing, and you're still in the know, so you're helping protect your people. So that's my focus for this discussion and thinking about when we're hearing things. That's what I want us doing, is having our ear out there and paying attention to what's going on with people around us. It's not going to prevent all this stuff. It's not going to prevent all our problems. Some people just do show up and become violent, but there's a percentage of folks out there where we may be able to get involved and interfere with the process ahead of time. If nothing else, it might make us more aware that we're standing outside when there's a potential problem, and we can maybe stop the process or engage the process outside instead of letting this person come in and begin to shoot our members or become violent with our members. So there's a chance we can stop it outside. In closing, I want to remind you that I'm talking about this information. It's not legal advice. I'm not giving you legal advice. It's my opinions based on my experience, and I have to say this. I have to cover my own self and my own group here. It's based on my experience in law enforcement, church security, my observations, my studies of what's going on, our current trends. Some of these things that we talk about on these podcasts, and including this one, might be items you need to discuss with your attorney or at a minimum with your church's insurance company. They cover you with liability, those kind of things. So they can give you the final word of what is legal and what is appropriate. And that's what I want for you. I don't want to do anything to get you into more trouble. I just want to share my observations based on this horrible, horrible event that has occurred. And I want to try to see us prevent further horrible events occurring in our ministries. Even though I go back to what I talked about last week, statistically, the big stuff is not likely to come to you. So the big active shooter stuff with 350,000 churches across our nation, statistically, it's unlikely to come to your church. But if it does, you and I got to be prepared for it. And one of those ways is maybe we can keep our ears open and have avenues that we could prevent some of this stuff. That's what I'm after. So that's it for this edition of the Church Security Answer Man. I want to thank you for joining me, joining our team. My hope is that we each learn from this information and improve our efforts to protect our people, our leaders, and our ministries. In that next episode I mentioned, Season 4, Episode 3, we're going to talk about the actual violent events at the Texas church and the timeline of that shooting incident to help us glean what information we can for our security purposes, for our ministry. So, and don't forget, there's more information all day, every day at the churchsecurityanswerman.com. We also try to post news and things like that on our Facebook page. I'd love to hear from you. If you have a question or a concern or a comment, you can post maybe here where you're finding this information, whether it's on YouTube or the churchsecurityanswerman.com. Leave us feedback where you can, or send me a note to Captain Joe Puckett at gmail.com. Thank you again for being here, and thank you again for participating in this for your people and for your ministries. I appreciate that, and I know that they appreciate that also. I hope you have a safe and secure week.
Thanks for watching the Church Security Answer Man video blog. Get more by joining us anytime at churchsecurityanswerman.com.